So over the weekend, I received an email with the tagline, "New Revolution in Games," and it was advertising an upcoming indie title by the name of Campfire. Now I get a lot of these emails from developers that reach out to content creators in the hopes that they will create some sort of video content that advertises the game to their audience. I usually take a look at all of them, but this one stood out to me because of what it was explaining when I opened the email. Campfire is a game in very early alpha that has a mobile and a web version in development with plans for a PC version in the future. The hook that stands out to me is the claim that Campfire is using AI-powered NPCs for the majority of the written content in the game. So okay, I thought, that sounds like something interesting to try out. We hear a lot about AI, its potential uses in the video game industry, and how it could move the industry forward or end up costing game designers jobs if it works too well. So since Campfire is a game that relies on the use of AI in a pretty large way, it seemed like a good way to see AI in a live video game setting and how it stacks up to things like traditional narrative design. So the results in my opinion were mixed, and I'll talk about them in this video. And please do not make a drinking game for how many times I say AI in this video, you will die. First things first, while this isn't a sponsored video and not a paid promotion, I will mention that I was given access to an early version of Campfire and had a direct conversation over Zoom with one of the developers. I said I would make a video about the game so long as I could highlight both positive and negative aspects of my experience. At first glance, Campfire presents striking similarities to Animal Crossing in art design, style, and presentation. It's very cute, cartoony, and has a wholesome sense of humor. For the most part, but we'll get to that later. For an early alpha, it looks fine, and that's not really what the game is trying to hook you with. After being welcomed to the island by the mayor, I'm given a task to find the resident miner that works somewhere nearby. So far there's no AI integration, but this is just the introduction of the game, so it makes sense that there would need to be more set dialogue for new players. Tutorials are very important in games, and I would never trust an AI to make one. After wandering up the island a bit, I find the miner, and this is where the AI conversations start. If you played around with any AI chatbots like ChatGPT, you'll recognize this instantly. So to give a brief overview, the game seems to use APIs to allow NPCs to respond to what the player types in the conversation box. Each NPC has a unique basic personality program that governs what they say and how their responses are worded when talking with the player. Again, relating it back to ChatGPT, it's kind of like when you're using it and you have a conversation, but tell the chatbot to talk to you in a specific way, like a cowboy, for example. What makes Campfire a bit deeper than a chatbot is how the reactions of the NPCs to what the player says influences the progression and the relationship with the NPC. Okay, again, drinking games, don't use NPC either. I am not paying for your hospital bills. If you say something the NPC likes or agrees with, you gain relationship XP in the top left corner of the screen. Do this enough and you'll level up your relationship with that character and earn some in-game currency. There is a cooldown cap to this mechanic, so you can't just like keep complimenting them forever to earn infinite money. And conversely, if you say something the NPC doesn't like or do things like threaten it, your relationship rank with them will decrease. However, it doesn't seem like they will ever choose to stop talking with you completely. You also use this conversation mechanic to progress and complete different tasks in the game. For example, I need to get a pickaxe from the miner, so I'll need to ask him to give it to me. Give it to me. So he does that, and then that starts the next task, which is to mine some ore. That's pretty standard stuff, and again, not really the interesting topic to focus on. So as a brief overview, you can run around the island, you can mine ore, get wood and food and stuff and all that jazz, but we're really just wanting to talk about the AI in this video because I think that's what is really interesting about it. So how does the AI conversation with NPCs affect the player's experience, and is it good? Well, I have some mixed opinions on it. On the one hand, each NPC you speak to does feel unique from the others. It doesn't necessarily feel like you're talking with a chatbot when you're having general conversation with the characters. In this way, I feel like small conversations with inconsequential NPCs could be very easily handled by AI with a decent degree of success that doesn't break immersion. And I was even impressed with the capability for the characters to answer questions like, "What's on my head?" And then they responded by saying a watermelon because I named myself Watermelon Head in the game. That's a cool little interaction that you probably wouldn't be able to easily have with a game that has a pre-written narrative. The characters also remember things you said to them in the past, but how long they remember it, I'm not entirely sure. And it does, however, start to fall apart when you begin looking for more meaningful content and conversation with the NPCs. Now, calling back to a recent video I did on Starfield, I mentioned that AI is great at making lots of content, but it really struggles to create meaningful and curated content. And that's true here too with Campfire in a lot of aspects. While I can talk to the NPCs about pretty much anything I want, there isn't a lot of substance when you try to dig deeper. Speaking about one topic will cause the NPC to react and respond to it, but they tend to artificially draw you back into one specific topic, usually related to the task that they want you to do. Because of that, one question that popped into my head was, what's the point of AI conversation if the results of that conversation is just as limited as what you would find in a traditionally written narrative? Like, if I were to talk to the miner and be presented with 3 dialogue options, one to complete the task, one to learn more about the NPC, and one to learn more about the island, with the latter two looping back to completing the task, what is the real difference between that and the AI conversation? Well, there are some differences, and I think your stance on which is better might depend on each person that's playing the game. On the one hand, the AI conversation lets you talk about absolutely anything you could imagine with the NPC, but the results of the conversation will likely be limited and not necessarily compelling. On the other hand, with a fully written dialogue tree, you're much more limited in how you speak to the NPC, the information that you can gain, and the results of your interaction with them, but the conversation that you have will likely be of higher quality and more suited to the game world. And I don't think either of these approaches are wrong necessarily. I think that AI might even suit some styles of games more than others. Having some conversations every couple of hours with an NPC to gain currency and reputation with them is an interesting gameplay mechanic, even if the AI responses are somewhat limiting. It's not something you could do in most games because of the manpower needed to write so much content. Games like Stardew Valley have similar mechanics where you speak to NPCs every now and then to increase your reputation with them, and while the conversation is much more meaningful, it does eventually end because there was only so much written for them. So I'm not entirely on one side or the other when it comes to this approach, and that honestly kind of surprised me. I think as a narrative designer myself and someone who plays RPGs until their eyes bleed, I prefer handcrafted dialogue, but there absolutely is merit to using AI to generate some form of dialogue and game design. This is a really fascinating topic because I've had lots of discussions with people about whether AI can replace some aspects of game design. Some are rightly concerned that companies may replace their jobs with AI, and others are embracing it and using it in their day-to-day. Now, my personal stance on the matter is I don't think AI can or ever will be smart enough to create engaging content at the same quality level of a human, but I do think that many companies will see the results of AI and decide that the dip in overall quality is fine because it saves money and increases the quantity of content. But the best uses I've seen so far for AI is those that make it a tool to make human-made content better. Having it suggest different sentence structures or phrases, or using it to generate reference images for an artist to use as inspiration, etc. Okay, so this slightly got away from Campfire, so let's reel it back in and talk about how smart the AI in Campfire truly is. If I'm being honest, while initially impressive, it does falter in many noticeable places that I feel are a detriment to the game at its current stage. Keeping in mind this is an early alpha and some polish is expected the further a game gets along in development, of course, but one of the issues that becomes apparent with the conversation system in Campfire is the repetition of key points and phrases. This is a problem that you see in a lot of AI chatbots. They learn to say a specific word or phrase and use it over and over again. For example, the responses from this character all began with well, comma. It makes the player feel like this isn't a real conversation, and I can tell you if I wrote NPC dialogue that all started with the same word every sentence, I wouldn't be working for long at all. AI also tends to have trouble with negativity. This is because most chatbots are specifically told not to recommend or create harmful content for users. So telling ChatGPT to roleplay as an orc weird boy dressed in a naughty elf costume isn't really gonna work. It deems things like that as inappropriate and usually warns you. The same goes for violent or gory content and that sort of thing. So you can't really get into an argument with the NPCs, nor can you create, say, an evil warlord that murders and pillages, because the AI tools don't think it's appropriate. But that's not as much of an issue for a game like Campfire, which is a very friendly and accessible game meant for all ages, so there's no need for really extreme content. However, the NPC's tendency to be a bit too goody-goodies still makes the conversations feel weird sometimes. It also leads to some really hilarious scenarios where the AI actively tries to make things less awkward, but its responses somehow make it creepier. For instance, I was talking about Pulp Fiction with the mayor, who is a dog, and mentioned that I really liked the scenes with feet in them. The AI was fine with this and said something about me enjoying feet scenes in Tarantino movies, which I didn't expect it to actually do. But then things got weird when I asked the mayor if I could smell his feet, deliberately trying to get the AI to stop the conversation. And because I really like the smell of paw pads. Like I thought, the mayor tried to stop the conversation and asked me to keep things above the collar, which is a clever little phrase from the AI because it furthers the conversation and also references the mayor being a dog. So good job. Then I asked if I could sniff his collar instead, thinking that he would again deny it. He didn't, because the AI doesn't consider that area of the body inherently sexual, I guess? So I don't know, that was weird and probably doesn't fit the game, but I was able to do it. It was at this point I realized the AI also isn't very good at making its world and character building feel consistent. A dog mayor on a cartoon island having a working knowledge of Tarantino movies doesn't really fit with the rest of the game, but the AI was trained on the internet, so it inherently understands most modern references. I feel like the ability of the AI to respond and know what things that logically should be outside of its universe should be reduced significantly, but I don't know anything about programming, so I don't even know how feasible that is. And the AI also has a tendency to just go along with whatever the player's saying, regardless of how completely unfitting or undeserved it is. Talking with the NPCs is kind of like when you take an improv class and they tell you to always say yes and when performing, because it keeps the skit going and teaches you to work with other people on stage. Like when I decided that I was going to roleplay as Walter White on the run and try to turn the island into my meth empire. There's something that just feels inherently wrong about being able to talk to a cartoon animal about using them as a drug mule to ferry narcotics off an island. Now, to the NPC's credit, most of them just flat out refuse to do this and try to change the conversation, and each of them did react differently as well, with one of them flat out threatening to call the robot detective on the island and tell them about me. But no matter how many times I told him to do it, nothing happened because nothing can happen. It's really just empty dialogue. Eventually I found the robot detective and he told me he likes coffee and donuts, so I told him I was giving him coffee and donuts, which he liked, but then I said they were filled with meth. But who cares about that? The thing is though, the NPC said they enjoyed my coffee and donuts, even though I didn't have any in my inventory, nor are those items in the game. It was more like we were playing a game of pretend rather than doing anything meaningful in the conversation. And after that, I gave him the Infinity Stones, and he said he would keep them safe, which is very much appreciated. We can't have those falling into the wrong hands again. Then it became another loop of dialogue, so I moved on and discovered another issue with the AI chat system. The NPCs are all compulsive liars. Because the AI generates new responses and content every time you talk to it, it'll sometimes just make stuff up that doesn't fit with the lore, world, events, or relationships of the game. I went and talked to a fisherman and told him I gave the detective coffee and donuts. He said that the detective didn't like coffee and donuts because he was, a robot. I then told him that the detective said they were his favorite, and he said he had never heard that before. A similar thing happened when one NPC told me they built a treehouse as a kid with another NPC, but they took all the credit. Then I went and talked to that NPC and they denied ever having built a treehouse. So the NPCs can't really work together to create a cohesive story, which can make the game feel like this uncanny world where things are barely held together and everything is just being made up as it goes along. Huh, that's kind of like Starfield. So, in short, there's lots of work that needs to be done in Campfire to make the game a more compelling experience overall when it comes to the use of AI. However, some of the NPCs' ability to communicate, respond, and commitment to their unique personalities is very impressive at certain points. I can see how people could enjoy interacting with them, and the ability to gain reputation and currency by talking with them is a great complementary gameplay mechanic. Now, I don't think that AI dialogue will ever be perfect. There are just too many variables involved in real conversation for it to accurately simulate them. And AI is kind of just plain bad at telling consistent and compelling stories, but not every game needs to have a compelling story or even consistency for that matter. If the player can engage in the mechanics of the game and enjoy the content that's being presented to them as a whole, then other shortcomings of specific design choices don't really matter as much. So I'm very interested to see how a game like Campfire progresses and when or if AI can improve enough to match curated narrative content. And hey, if Campfire looks interesting to you or you would like to play around and experience the AI system yourself, there is an affiliate link below that will let you try the current web version of the alpha. Keep in mind, this is not a finished product and it's generally a proof of concept. And lastly, if you are not subscribed to the channel but enjoyed the video, I recommend subscribing, obviously. Okay, that's it. Bye!